guys, Nike here. I have been wanting to do a video about Berserker for a long time, and after the most recent balance patch, I've finally been inspired to do it. When I look at the Spellbreaker class, I see that it has a functional DPS build, and it's just all wrong. The class was not designed with having a DPS build in mind, and it's only possible due to post-release buffs that they tacked on afterwards to stop the people who were crying that their elite spec wasn't good in PvE, which it wasn't designed to be. Right now, it's a DPS class that is built on the foundation of a bunkery, bruisery PvP spec, and it really has no right to exist as it does. It's a Franken spec, and it plays awfully, and I would posit that in PvE, no one actually enjoys playing it. On the other side of the coin, Berserker was designed from the ground up to be a DPS spec. Post-release, the power aspect of the Berserker Elite spec was toned down to make room for Spellbreaker, I'm sure, and it has found its niche as a Condi support build and a very mediocre Condi DPS build. Spellbreaker is filling its designed niche perfectly in PvP and exceeding its niche in PvE. Berserker is failing in both, but I'm not going to get into PvP, obviously, on this video. Berserker was a viable power class until they made two major changes. They reduced the Primal Burst to count as 1 bar of Adrenaline for Berserker's power, and reduced the damage of Arc Divider. The second change to Arc Divider eliminated the Greatsword as a viable weapon for the Berserker, and at the time, Axe hadn't been buffed yet, so Axe was not yet viable. The first change to Primal Burst, however, eliminated all power builds entirely from being possible. Just undoing those two changes alone would be sufficient, at least, to making an Axe Greatsword DPS build semi-viable with Strength, Discipline, and Berserker. However, there are some structural changes that could be done, some of them involving the core warrior spec, to make it play better and be better. The first thing I do would be to move empowered allies to strength in a swap with Great Vitality, and then buff Great Vitality once it's in tactics. What this does effectively is allow a pure axe build to bring empowered allies without gimping itself by being forced to take tactics. The upside is that the current core warrior Bana meta build could be replaced by a more fun and more rewarding Berserker variant that isn't hobbled by taking tactics. It means that it would be able to play Strength, Discipline, and Berserker without the sub-squad losing EA. Additionally, you could play a pure DPS version that didn't use banners and still brought EA, which is very valuable, and would be pretty good if the build came in at around 33k DPS. One last feature of this switch is that it creates a much bigger divide in functionality between the Condi build and the power build of Banner Warrior. If you're a power-based sub-squad, you will want EA, and thus be pushed to run the power build to get it. In a Condi group, you will benefit more from an empowered ally's missing Discipline Condi build. The days of running a Condi build with EA would be over, and good riddance to that, because it was completely counterproductive and counterintuitive to how the class should play. The second change I would make would be to suggest a buff to Decapitate. Decapitate is the Axe Primal Burst skill, and I would buff it beyond making it count as a T3 burst for Berserker's power, which I want all the Primal Bursts to be. Currently, the skill is really anemic, and a Tier 3 non-Berserker Eviscerate is superior not only in damage, but also in fueling Berserker's power. There should be no situation where the base burst skill is superior to a Primal Burst, and right now that isn't true for Decapitate and Arc Divider, which are weaker than either of the core Greatsword or Axe bursts. The last change I would suggest is buffing the Rage skills to be superior to Signets in a DPS build. In a pure DPS build, you will certainly use Bull's Charge and Kick to fuel peak performance. However, the third slot, usually reserved for Signet of Might, could and should be replaced with something more active. To solve that, I would recommend buffing the power damage of Wild Blow by about 20%, and reducing the cast time from 3/4 to 1/2 second, and removing any aftercast. This would be sufficient to make Wild Blow superior to Signet of Might, and make the Berserker rotation even more fun and active. If all of these changes were implemented, the end result would be to give Power Berserker, both DPS and banners, a clear role and place in the meta, separate from Condi Warrior, which would have its own place in the meta in Condi groups. This would eliminate the pressure on ANET to maintain Spellbreaker as a viable DPS raid class, and then can rebalance it based on its core competency of a PvP bruiser and control class. In closing, I would love to play Power Berserker again, both as a DPS class and as an upgrade for the core Warrior banner build. Long term, I do see a problem with peak performance and Warrior's dependence on it for viable power DPS. But changing or eliminating that in a satisfactory manner is probably a bit too much to digest on top of these changes for right now, but I would suggest that in the future it be looked at to make Warrior and any future Elite spec long-term viable. Well, thank you guys for watching. I appreciate you listening to my rambling. If you have any comments on this video, please leave them down below, and anything interesting I'll be sure to address. Thank you guys so much for watching, and have a great day.